So Sonny, you said in your LinkedIn bio you were a five-time founder, but I consider you a 14-time founder. Like you've been starting companies ever since you were a high school kid.
True.
And I don't think you've ever really worked for the man, except for one company that we worked on together. But outside of that, you've been a serial founder. I met Sonny at Jason Calacanis's launch accelerator, where I was a pitch competition judge when I was formerly in venture. And Sonny was giving his infamous talk on from napkin to NASDAQ. And I mean, I loved his wisdom. And Sonny and I grabbed a virtual meetup afterwards. And I invited him in to become my um, my firm's EIR. So he worked with a bunch of our portfolio companies on growth. And then when I joined Swimply during the pandemic, I basically said, Sonny, you have to come in and head up revenue and growth for us. But since then, Sonny has founded two different companies and has raised a bunch of capital in his lifetime. And as I mentioned, like started lots and lots of companies and one that he went and took all the way public. So I thought that no better person to come and speak to us this morning and share your wisdom and insights. So welcome, Sonny. I'm so thrilled to have you here. But beyond that, he's one of my favorite people ever and the coolest person. Everybody needs to get to know him. Everybody LinkedIn connect with him. He really takes the time for everybody and just one of the greatest human beings on the face of this planet. So, Sonny, over to you.
That's an awesome intro. Thank you. And yeah, as you guys all probably hear, love Ha. Ha's amazing, so brilliant, more energy than any of us combined. So insane. This is cool. So Ha gave me a call yesterday. I'm happy to be here. I hope it's not a second fiddle to what you were expecting. But she asked me to share my story and maybe some of the lessons I've learned as a longtime founder. And let me just first ask, you guys are all founders in your own companies. I think she said it's AI focused. And everyone you can just do a raise of hands on your camera. Do you guys all have products ready to go and market? One, two, okay, three. So a couple are working on some product. And then does anybody have revenue of, let's call it like $1 million a year? Okay, all less than $1 million a year. Okay, great. This is cool. So that's consistent with what Ha told me. I just wanted to kind of find out. So building companies, you're getting rolling. She wanted a little focus on go to market, and that's been my specialty. So I built some slides. Thank you, Claude, for the help. Um, this morning at 8:47. But how's that visual, Ha? You seen the slides and everything? Good?
Yeah, it's good.
Cool, cool. So I just titled this "Being a Founder is Wild" because that's the best title I could think of because I did not use Cloud for that. And then I said lessons learned that match my hair color. If you guys can see my hair color, as Haas said, I've been around a long time. So I'm calling in right now from Sacramento, California, which as far as Silicon Valley goes, might as well be Nashville, Tennessee, because it's even though it's an hour and a half away, we've always been the little stepchild until Ha wrapped me in her warm embrace and I got into the valley. I've been a longtime founder, as Ha said. I didn't put this in here, but I did start companies in my, gosh, I think before my teens and even into my teens, just building stuff. I came from a very similar background that Ha came from, super humble beginnings. I was raised by a single mother. And we didn't have much money. So if you wanted stuff, you had to go get money yourself. And I think that's what taught me sales in my earliest days as I tried to build skateboards and, rehab skimboards and make t-shirts and do all these kind of crazy things that I'll leave out of this, but just to sell stuff on the street corner and make some money. And that led me into, I didn't know the word entrepreneur, but it led me into being what is known now as a founder and entrepreneur. And here I am, 55 years old, still doing it, still founding companies. I'll celebrate my 30th wedding anniversary this year, probably my proudest thing in my life. And I have two wonderful children who are on their way, 26 and 22. So life gets crazy, you guys. So get ready. All right, cool. So I'll take you through the story. I'm going to go really fast so we have time for discussion and Q&A. And as Ha said, I think on here, at Sonny Mayugba is my name. Like you can find me on any socials or just email me, sonny@100.com, not 100health.com, sonny@100.com. And you can reach me if there's anything I can help you with ever. I'm an open book, but I'll take you through my journey. Yes, I started wearing glasses in my 20s. That's me. So I'd say that like, so my first company was a scam. Um, I was this broke skateboarder musician here in Sacramento who was delivering, if you know, like bike messengers. I was delivering packages to law firms to try and make money for rent on a little 100 cc motorcycle in the early 90s. And I met the guy in the background who looks like he's stoned, but he's not actually holding the bucket. That's us going to drain someone's backyard pool so we could skate it illegally. And he said, "Hey, I got this idea." And this was this guy named John Bacigalupi, who I'm still friends with today. And he said, "Hey, I want to start a magazine." And he goes, "You seem like you can talk and do sales and I want you to start this magazine." I'm like, "Start a magazine? I don't know what you're talking about." And you got to realize, like back then, you know, the world was a very different place. Like distribution was owned by three companies. It was is the democratization of the internet hadn't happened yet. It was just coming on. And so desktop publishing was born. So he said, "Hey, I got this idea." And he bought me my first computer. I was 22 years old, so very different than my children, probably very different than all of you guys. I didn't touch a computer. I didn't even see a computer until I was 22 years old. And I got this MacBook with an old trackball that got a bunch of lint in it. And we started this magazine out of a recording studio, and it was pretty crazy. Like basically, the this company I ended up selling to the largest publisher in the world by the age of 25, passed on my scholarship to Columbia University, and did this for 10 years, and it changed my life. And we published on Usenet, then the internet. We became this darling in desktop publishing. And the lessons I learned here, I mean, it was a 10-year company. My first company was a 10-year. It was a good, I won't call it a grand slam, but it's a nice little home run. Like, 25 years old, you have your first exit. And I bought a house and met my wife and went all over the planet. It was really cool. But the thing that I would say here is this was the days of like, there wasn't, I mean, there was VC, but it was like Sand Hill Road and a few companies. And I didn't even know what that meant. We did our first issue and it was profitable from day one. And I look back and I look at all the venture I've raised through my career, which I'll talk a little bit about, and I'm going back to this model now. It's like we did our first issue. It was a physical magazine. It made profit. It was 16 pages. And then, not 10 years later, it still kept making profit. The other thing is when we sold the company, we were given this offer of like more money or less money and this other deal with like earnouts and things like that. One thing I'll say is like always take the money because you never know what's coming. That's a whole nother side story. And the other lesson I would say here is not only stay true, but like this was, you read this on all the Silicon Valley blogs, but a mentor is invaluable. Someone like I mean, like John changed my life and changed the trajectory of my whole career. And so I did that for 10 years. And then I did a few companies, as Ha said, that kind of went nowhere, and this was one of them. So I thought I was cool. Like a lot of founders, if you have a win early, and all you guys look relatively young, like if you have a win early, you think you're so smart and you're so invulnerable. And so I did something right and I did something wrong. I started a social network and I had this idea in 2006. Now you guys got to realize Facebook had like it was still private. It was like in '05 or '06. It was like it had like 5 million members. MySpace had was just starting to sell to Fox for like, I don't know what it was, 500 million or 50 million or something. It seemed like a lot, but it wasn't a lot in these standards today. And I had this idea that social media was going to connect. And for those of you who weren't there, in '06, '07, people thought social media was like a little trend, probably what you hear a lot in like maybe even in AI circles. And I just knew one of my superpowers is I have this really good instinct. I just knew I was like, social media is going to take over the world, which now we know it has. So I started this social network, and I did a lot of things right. I raised for it. I got this stuff together, but what I did wrong was this was me being a CEO, and I did a lot of things wrong, which was one, I recruited co-founders that were literally just like me. So I'm this sort of gregarious sales and marketing guy, and I got two other sales and marketing guys, and we three were the co-founders. That's like really bad. So make sure when you build your core founding team, it's got to have different perspectives, different talents, different things. And then the other thing is like I did not invest in product. I thought I was going to build this company and sell it. So like my engineers, I literally paid cash and like buy the project, which is the stupidest, I know it sounds obvious today, but I was like, oh no, I'm just going to build this tech product and just sell it. But that's not how tech works. And so it was a really good lesson here. I failed miserably. It really hurt me deeply. This company went out of business in 2008. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 2008, 2009. 2009, I think it was. We had a little run. We started to go, like we did a lot of things right, but it failed. And as you know, in social, like that was the wave. So I was on the wave, but I crashed miserably because I did not invest in my people and I didn't build the team properly. Yeah, that hurt me deeply, and I kind of moved away and I worked some jobs and was fiddling around. And I had this other mentor who wanted me to get in the restaurant business. I'll be really quick here, but I ended up starting this restaurant. And by the way, if you have an exit and you have money, don't do a restaurant. So I'm just going to give you that for advice right away. Just it's the easiest way to burn cash. Don't do it. But I did it. It was one of the check boxes I wanted in my life. Probably like you're probably thinking tech bro, and that's probably true. But I really wanted to do it. So I built this cool concept. It was like this craft cocktail bar, like something you'd see in like, Nopa or like the Mission in San Francisco. It was in Sacramento though. It was really cool. It was very popular, profitable out of the gate. The company ran well. And the lesson that I think I applied here was I sort of looked at all my wins and my failures that I'd done previously, and I was like, you have to really get in touch with your core values. Like, what do you truly believe in? So we did a lot of things different. Like I did profit sharing at a restaurant that normally didn't really happen. I gave equity to people in the restaurant that didn't put capital in. That didn't happen in the hospitality space. And we did a lot of other kind of unique things that I had learned along the way around and then built the right team. This thing was cool. Like we built this company up for 10 years and then sold it, and you don't make a lot of money in restaurants, but it was a fun venture and it taught me a lot of reflection about myself and really applying my core values to the execution of the business. So through that journey, I saw something. And what I saw was that, first off, the restaurant space is just brutal. It's really, really hard, as everyone knows, but until you do it, you really understand it. But what I also saw was like, there's going to be this connection with mobile. This is now, we're going to talk about like, this is sometime around 2012, 2013. I had this idea. And then I was like, mobile is going to be the connection to get the right customers to the right merchants. So, and then also, no one had applied dynamic pricing to this hospitality space. So I ended up building this product called Requested, where you could basically name your own price at restaurants and bars. It was kind of funny. We were just too early. It was very, very early. So let me tell you how this worked. Is like you could go to this app, you could find restaurants in your neighborhood, and for off-peak times, you could pay less, and for peak times, you could pay more to bump the line. All these things are now coming true and people know what QR codes now, but you got to realize in like 2013, no one knew what this was. Anyway, I put together an engineering team. I got the app built. Stripe was barely born. That's how long ago this was. Like literally Stripe was born mid-development. We're like, hey, there's this new payment system called Stripe. Let's use that. So this is how long ago this was. And a couple key lessons here. So we built this company. We built it, we got it launched, but it didn't work because the business transformation process was way too big. We were like disrupting the way restaurants work and disrupting the way the consumer had to think. All these things are starting to come true now, but again, we're talking like this is 12 years ago. So built this company I requested, but here's the kind of cool lesson here. We built it in Sacramento. I raised some local money here and we got it going. I hired some engineers. It was cool. This time I did something right. I hired 3 engineers as co-founders. That's it. So me and 3 technical people built the app, got it launched, sold it into market, and we took it to market, and it was making sales and some money, but it was sluggish and had churn. It wasn't really working. But we said, okay, let's go raise a round. This little alpha's working. Let's go raise a round. And I did something interesting. People say, oh, cold emails don't work. I cold emailed Jason Calacanis, and I got a meeting, met with him for 5 minutes, and he funded the company. And then he brought in Chamath and all these other fancy people. So I'll just tell you the lesson here. Like lots of reach out, running your investment process like a process works. And yes, you want warm intros, and yes, there's all those best practices. But sometimes those little cold emails that work, and I'm the living proof. Like I shot him a cold email on a Tuesday night at 5 p.m. on a tired day. He wrote back, and then we got funded and worked with Jason, which is ultimately how I met Ha. But the company didn't work. And then the other lesson here was, as you know, and as founders, it gets really, really fucking hard. Really, really hard a lot of times. And the easiest thing is to give up. Like it's so much easier to say, God, I want to get a job at, pick a FANG company or some cool job where I don't have to worry about this and I get paid more and my wife's not mad at me or my boyfriend's not mad at me or whatever. And I've done that. I did that prior in my career because it's just easier to give up and put your head in the sand. But on this one, I said no. And so I did something interesting where I was like, you know who matters most is I had shareholders who took a chance on us. I have to get them some form of a return. I have employees now. We had like 8 employees. So I spent all my days traveling 4 paths here to either sell the company, raise more money, make this work, or license the tech. And the funny thing is, because I ran that like a process and I just really focused on executing that every day, all those things ended up coming true. We did raise a little more money. The app started to work a little bit. We ended up licensing it to some people. And then something really crazy happened. I met this company out in Louisiana who was doing food delivery in 2015. And I'm like, food delivery. And now, if you guys remember 2015, 2016, we thought the war of food delivery was over. It was Grubhub had just gone public. I think it was going public. And then you have like Uber coming in and DoorDash and Amazon and Postmates and Caviar. It was like, okay, in California, New York, you knew it was like the war was over. And here's another lesson. Everybody says, oh, your space is crowded. This is crazy. There were 840 identical food delivery companies in America in 2017. So 840, we're all doing the same shit. Okay. We all have an app. You all get some restaurants. You pick up food from A and you take it to someone's home B. 840. So don't let anyone ever tell you, oh, you're in a crowded space, you'll never make it, because it's bullshit. It's all about relentless focus and execution, and of course, strategy. So I met this founder who was doing this little teeny tiny food delivery business in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And he and I connected. There's a whole longer story I won't bore you with, but we ended up connecting because I was just trying to like get my app licensed in other regions. And he actually knew more about my business than I had ever thought. So he and I ended up connecting. Funny enough, we ended up striking a merger over the phone. We never met. That merger ended up becoming true. We did a stock exchange merger. Our companies became one. Of course, we met. He came out. He met Jason and Shamath and all the guys. They approved it. We ended up becoming Waiter and Requested doing one. We were like, oh, let's try both. And I was like, look, Requested doesn't work. It's a great idea. Everyone loves it. Everybody loves this idea, but it doesn't work, and let's focus on food delivery. And so we did. And this was really cool. We ended up merging our companies because we had value on each side. And we ended up going, let's do food delivery. Chris, our CEO, knew something that others didn't know is from Texas to North Carolina, there were roughly, I don't know, 1,200 cities, and this is going to blow your guys' minds, that had no food delivery. Even though there are 840 companies in America, no one was going out there. And I'll tell you another funny story. When I took Chris and one of the Waiter board members out to San Francisco to meet with Jason and a few other people, and there were some very fancy investors there from big firms. I'm not going to name their names. And I told them that, hey, this is a shot at getting my employees a job and getting my investors a return. We're going to merge with this company. These guys literally laughed in my face. Ha knows the story. Laughed in my face and started making fun of me in person in San Francisco. Casey Winters was there. He wasn't laughing in my face. He was actually really supportive. But we knew something they didn't know. So another lesson is just because these investors have fancy logos, they do not know everything. Trust me, they don't. As a founder, you know way more than they do. So what we knew that they didn't know is there were all these cities sub 300,000 that all the food delivery companies were ignoring. Turns out we fucking opened 730 of those cities. We grew this company to 24,000 employees. We were doing 800 plus million dollars a year. $800 million a year in revenue. Okay. And then we did a SPAC with Tillman Fertitta, owner of the Rockets, and Rich Handler, the president of Jefferies Bank. So we had $308 million, about $316 million of liquidity for the company. And then we took it public on NASDAQ. And the same team that did that little merger over the phone in a little podunk city in Louisiana was the exact same team that stood on the platform and rang the bell at NASDAQ. It's very, very cool. But that was only because of relentless focus. I mean, every day grinding and staying very, very focused on the team and building. So that was sort of the lesson there. And then I went, did the thing you do after some exit. I took some time off and then I went and worked for VC. So I worked for Jason for a little bit. And then, as you know from the story, I met Ha, fell in love, followed Ha to Sparrow as her EIR and worked with this team. And the lesson there was really cool because I got to get exposure to a lot more founders, a lot more companies. And you start to realize the real theme is about people. I mean, I think Paul Graham said it, right? People, no, products change, people don't. Like people are really what it's all about. You get the right people on the right team, it's like you can really accomplish anything. So I did some time there, and that was a really neat lesson. These folks really helped me in a really tremendous way. And then I followed Ha to Swimply and I led growth there. So we were the first two employees with this company, with the two founders. And we did some amazing work. We like 3.5x this company in 1 year, built a bunch of processes. But you learn it's about people and about culture. And Ha's probably told you guys the story is like the culture always comes from the founder and the CEO. No matter what. You can put all the billboards up and all the bullet points, all the bullshit things up on the walls. It's the founder who and the CEO who really dictates the culture. So we left there after a year. And then I was tapped by a good friend of mine, and I co-founded this company called Azra Games. And it was really neat. And this to me was like a good lesson in talent. Mark is a prolific game maker. So he and I went on the road and we caught the end of that crypto bubble. And another lesson is when you see waves happening in the valley, and James Courier from NFX talks about this a lot, like catch those waves. It's not cheesy, it's not lame. Like do it because we caught the end of the crypto wave and we said we were going out and doing this Web3 game. And we were 6 weeks old with a deck. And we had, I mean, literally a deck. And like we had recruited maybe a couple people and we raised $15.5 million. Let 10 of it from Andreessen. Like a bidding war was going on for Azure Games. And we had nothing. We had a freaking Google slide deck. It was pretty cool. So we ended up raising like 70 million that I led on with a bunch of fancy investors from this company. And a lot of that was really about talent and vision. We knew we were building, and this game, I think, is now finally coming out 4 years later. Gaming is so wild, really, really crazy. And then for me, it was interesting. Like I was doing this company and I was 2 years into it, and I was the COO and co-founder. And so I was building the company, building the processes, standing up the go-to-market and the growth. And I realized like games take a while and it's a mobile RPG game. So it's a very specific type of game. So I started to do the thing that Jobs always talked about. If you wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, you're not excited to go to work too many times in a row, you got to question that. And I was like, fuck, man, I don't play mobile video games. I don't play any type of video game system. I think my son freaking lives on games, but I just don't. And it was like you can do the imposter thing, but it's like this was downright like I couldn't handle it. And so I ended up having a really cool separation from Azra, still a co-founder, still a big shareholder of the company, still homies with all these guys. But I left the company after 2 years. And I ended up going back to people. I reconnected with a buddy of mine who's a very, very special founder who told me this story about what he had gone through. He was a two-time founder. He sold his company. He did something different. I have raised lots of capital from lots of investors. He bootstrapped two companies and had two massively, massively wild exits. But he's in his 30s and he ends up taking this biological age test. It says he's 47. His father died of a heart attack at 47. He thinks this is voodoo. He thinks he's a stud, tech bro, like healthy. He ends up hiring all these fancy celebrity doctors and this concierge medicine team. And he realizes that, concierge medicine is really reserved for this 1%. And he made this decision. He goes, Sonny, I want to bring this to everybody, and we can, and it's the right time to do that. And so this is what I'm doing now. I have this company called 100 Health. I'm the co-founder and the chief commercial officer. Tyler is my CEO and founder. He's a product-led founder, and he's always built on the product side. And it's really, really cool. So we essentially have built a mobile app on iOS and Android that can really give you a true picture of your health through medical records. Literally, you can pull in all your medical history. It's wild. Your goals, your onboarding, advanced labs, blood and urine for over 100 biomarkers, and all your wearable data into one true system, which is what everybody's been wanting. We've built an evidence repository. I'd love to meet all you AI founders to talk about this. We built this evidence repository that's ingested 3 million clinical studies, white papers, research articles. And then we built this like multi-agent judging system that does this judging for personal intervention, and we build personalized protocols for people. This is basically what private doctors would do for 100 grand a year. We do this for $500 a year. And then we have like a marketplace and all these other cool things. And so he told me about this a couple years ago. And then I just realized something for me. It was like, wow, at my stage and my age and what I'm doing, having this type of purpose is really, really cool. We let our first members in mid last year, and you start to see people who discover, we can't say this on the record, but like we've had two people who basically whose lipase which is the enzyme that controls your pancreas, was so out of range, it was basically would be precancerous. We've had triglycerides that are supposed to be in the 20 range at 750. So that's like, cardiac issues, all discovered through our app and people changing their habits. It's really, really cool. So for me, I'm really into purpose and mission. I think they matter most and all these journeys and all these things you do. And then I think one thing I always tell people is like make sure you have fun on the journey because it's hard. Um, but don't give up and I'll leave it there. So I know that was longer than I expected, but I didn't rehearse this. I hope there were some nuggets in there for you, and I'll kick it back over to Ha and Garrett.
Okay, well, Sonny, you're an incredible storyteller, so thank you for sharing your journey with us. I'm gonna actually just open it up for questions because I want to make sure that we get through a lot of questions. If you guys don't have any questions, and then I'm gonna ask questions, but I'd rather have all of you since you're in the trenches building out your businesses, ask. But Sonny, one of the smartest growth people, marketers I know, so ask away.
Cool. I'll check chat too. I don't know if there's some in chat. Oh, that's scary. Okay, cool. Oh, my first. Oh, that's funny. My first. Yeah, 550 an hour. I remember that. Like, I think I worked the drive-through at Taco Bell, you guys. So that was like 350 an hour.
I
Cool.
can't figure out how to digitally raise my hand, so I'll just start talking.
Yeah.
Sonny, thanks so much for all that. I love that a lot of the stuff that you've done is actually in the consumer space, because I'm building something in the consumer space, and it's actually really hard to find people who have had success in the consumer. It just seems like everyone's working in B2B SaaS or vertical AI. The question that I've got for you is. I'm curious how you've approached sort of building initial awareness and usage in the consumer space. In particular, because like there's a moniker that I've heard from people, which is like consumer is largely nice to have, right? And when you're building a nice to have product, like it's harder to get the snowball rolling. So it's something that I'm trying to figure out right now. I'm happy to give you more information, but like at a high level, I'm curious how you've approached doing that and doing it successfully, clearly.
That's a super great question. So, by the way, don't forget, there was a time when everybody was consumer, like, that '08 or and it goes in waves. And then people found out, oh, I failed at consumer. I can go B2B and make 30 million. You know what I mean? So it goes in waves. So stick to your mission. Yes, consumer is much harder. It is very, very hard. You get an enterprise sale, you get that cycle, and that's a different story. But this is a really good question. Actually, it's cool because I used to talk about this a lot with the Sparrow founders. So what I figured out is, and as I audit and look back at my career, it's that awesome quote. I didn't know this quote until later, which is to do the things that don't scale. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you a few examples. When I started my snowboard, skateboard, music magazine, it was like a physical rag. And you got to understand, guys, distribution was owned by mafia forces. I'm not being conspiracy. I was threatened over the East River. This is a true story. So we were this little rag with no distribution. So what did we do? Well, we printed up our rag ourselves and we passed them out at shops and coffee shops and skate shops and ski resorts by hand in a truck. I pay a guy money to go pass those out. So that was guerrilla distribution back then. What else did we do? In those days, because distribution was paid and owned, and again, it's the same story in different formats. We found this thing called Usenet, which for those of you my age will remember, if not, look it up. It was sort of that precursor to the consumer internet where you could publish all your text. It was a text only. There were the alt dots before, the HTTPS or whatever. So alt dot whatever, you could find a forum and you could publish all your text. That became a distribution channel for us. So I'll give you another example. When we were doing the food delivery stuff, even though I gave you the sexy story, 800 million, blah, blah, bro, it was hard every day. Like in food delivery, here's the kicker. You have to win your customer back 3 times a day. Because if they order breakfast on food delivery, you lost them. Now you got to go get them again and reacquire them. And you hope they order lunch or dinner, at least maybe order 2 weeks later or whatever. So you're constantly marketing. So I built this whole thing called street teaming. I took from my old music days where I hired kids at 10 bucks an hour, put them in shirts and sent them on the streets with flyers. And they would go street team hospitals, libraries, frickin' malls, anywhere where people were. Again, distribution, find those ant trails, get your name in front of them. So those are a few examples. And then, of course, what we're doing now at 100 is like, here's what we did last year is like, okay, fuck, how the hell are we going to come out in this world of AI, noise, social, and consumer health tech? So here's what we did last year. We did personal invites. Everybody get your friend network, start inviting your friends. And again, that's already none of these are new ideas. You just pick and borrow and then you get a little creative and you tweak on it. Here was my little tweak on it. I called them private cohorts and I made them limited. There's only 100 seats. Boom, the first one sold out in 3 days. There's only 200 seats, sold out in 4 days. So I did a little creative tweak on it just to try to get
Mhm.
the flywheel spinning because you want to get that first 1,000 customers, right? And then you
Yeah.
go, hey, I got revenue. I've got money. I've got customers. They're pissed about this. I'm learning about the product. I'm learning about that. So do those guerrilla things in those early days. It's about guerrilla. Go to conferences. Depending what your product is, you find those trails where your customers are. We used to send people out on the streets where there were other restaurants, and we had T-shirts that said, "Hey, do you love local restaurants?" Well, guess what? Everyone loves local restaurants. It's a loaded question. So we'd have a guy who was really a shill for Requested. And they'd say, yeah, I love Request. And here's what they do. Yeah, tell me about the local restaurants here. Oh, there's this app called Requested that has all the greatest local. Yeah, dude, it worked.
Yeah.
It freaking
Yeah.
worked. So you come up with these little tweaks and creative ideas on ideas that already exist.
Super helpful.
Cool. And I think in
And
that, yeah, jump in. Go,
just a
Fred.
follow up to that. So doing non-scalable things help drives a lot of learning, as you described. But any suggestions on how to then transition to scalable things? Or is it just the non-scalable things naturally have a tipping point and then they become scalable?
Absolutely. No, I love this. So let me tell that through a story, a real world story. We were doing non-scalable things you requested. Lots of like launch parties and flyers and getting restaurants to market us and personal invites and all these cool things, right? So what do you think happened, Fred, when we did all that?
Started drum up press and
Bingo. You nailed it. Yes, it drummed up a bunch of noise. Like, woo, there's this new app requested, pool of press, and people started going. And then they joined the product. And then let me tell you what happened. It didn't work. The customers had a poor experience. So we had all this traffic coming in, and yeah, you were getting some conversions, but they were having a poor experience. So what I learned was, oh my God, this shit isn't going to work. So we either need to get more money and tinker with this product, or there's a flaw with this concept. Turned out I was right. There was a flaw with the concept. Then I went over to food delivery, and then we're like, we found now if you did food delivery in California in 2016, you were screwed because it was too competitive. We did food delivery, but our strategy was we did it in the South of America, a US South. And sure enough, product market fit, like boom, you could see it. People were signing up, having a good experience, and it was working. So we did all that with Guerrilla, same things, drumming up business, hand to hand, local food, what do you call them, festivals, and just all the little bullshit little stuff you do. So then what we did is like, okay, then you go build your growth operating system. So you get your pixel tracking, you get your website, you get your ad platforms ready, you get your capital, you get your budget, you get a budget, and then you build an omni-channel marketing plan. You go, okay, I'm going to try, and then you start experimenting. I'm going to try Facebook ads. Back then it was, Facebook ads. Now it's Meta, right? And then you go, I'm going to try PR. I'm going to try TV ads. I tested it all. And then you got to test, measure, learn. So you test something and then you go, "Oh my God, shit, I just did Facebook ads. Our sales went up 40% last week. Poor dollars." And so this is one of Ha's favorite is I always called it, you find oil wells and you drill that well till it's dry. Or, if you're a tech guy, you'd say you'd find the asymptote. So that's really what you're doing is you're finding the asymptote, right? You're like, so we did that. So you would find, and that's what you do. So you build your growth operating system, you invest in scale, and just milk that channel until it goes away. And it goes away in multiple ways. Either it stops delivering customers, or it gets too competitive and diluted, or the customers become too expensive. And then you got to get creative. So for example, Facebook was killing it for us. And then all of a sudden it was like, remember 17, pre-IDFA, everybody was like, figured it out. Oh my God, I can get app installs for $2. So everybody started pouring money. So now customer acquisition costs went up. Well, Snap, no one really got into. So I went into Snap and you try something different. And it turns out I was getting, Snap installs for like 80 cents. So you just drill that well till it goes. And you got to keep moving. So does that answer your question?
It does. Thanks.
Good.
I have a quick follow-up question though,
Sure.
if I have the mic. In the
Yeah.
beginning, you talked about with your first magazine how you're profitable from day one. In your more recent endeavors, I imagine, you had to raise money. You were not profitable from day one. How would you connect the dots in those learnings? Like, because in this day and age in tech, there is a lot of doing non-scalable things, having a lot of cash outflow, not having profit. Any suggestions and recommendations on how to balance the two?
Yeah, it is a tough one. I think in this day and age, like unless you're like these vibe coder kids that I hang out with, these 22-year-olds in New York who are like building these apps, making 2 million bucks and dumping it, little study buddies and crazy stuff like that. Even those guys, like they still take capital to get their little operation going. I think it's a different world. When we did it, you know, I begged and borrowed resources. So I told you it came out of a recording studio. Well, my mentor he already had a business. He had a couple businesses going on. And so I got to like camp out in his office for free, call advertisers. And in those days, I'd say, hey, can you send me your ad and your check? I need your check up front. So, so the balance of the two is if you're going to focus on that, I did it out of necessity. I didn't know any better. I was like, we couldn't print this magazine if we didn't have any money, and none of us had money. So I had to hustle these advertisers, get their ads, and have them send me a check until we had enough money to print the magazine. And then you got more checks. You're like, ooh, we made a little money. Let's do another one. So that's one, and you can apply that on, your world if it's even possible with tech. Otherwise, look, if you're in a space, I think you're all in AI, it's frothy and you're doing novel things and the world is just so beautiful. It's like the best time to be alive. If you can raise, I would highly suggest it. Like if you have to raise, go raise. Like go do it and just run it like a process and get some capital and then you got to balance. There's a whole nother talk about your valuation and what you raise at and how much money and that gets tricky. So make sure you get people like Ha who have done it many many times and go, what's the smart thing because that really matters. Like even when at Azra we were getting offered you know prices of 200 million when we still had a deck and it's like that can bite you later in a really bad way. So um, it really comes down to necessity, is what I'd say. If you have to be profitable, freaking do your best to hustle that and figure it out if you can. If you have an opportunity to raise capital, hey, raise capital and make it happen.
Sonny, can you touch a little bit more on fundraising? So I think, I mean, when I was in venture, what I saw is that there were a certain class of founders, right? Like they could raise all the money in the world, because they had the right degrees or had the right connections and et cetera. And they didn't need very much traction, although it was great if they did have traction. And then there's the rest of us, which is I would call the 98% of us that, might not have the networks or the sexy profile resumes, etc. So I know I mean, you're a boy from Sacramento,
Yeah, I'm in
and
the
you went out and
98
raised money in Silicon Valley. So what tips do you have for all of us who, or maybe in that, not in the top 1, 2%, and and
Yeah,
are struggling with fundraising?
for sure. So yeah, I mean, I faced this my whole career, and the beginning of it, I didn't know. Like I said, I cold emailed Jason Calacanis, got that call back, and then met with him for 5 minutes, and off we go. Um, that was my entree into Silicon Valley. Before that, I had raised actually a lot of money, but it was all local yokel angels. So I had a little experience in raising. Um, yeah, I mean, look, if you're an alum of the Chris Sacca, Jack Dorsey world in the hot tub, yeah, you can go raise because you got the network and you're that guy. For the rest of us, it really is a process. You got to run it like a very, very serious process. Like I imagine most of you are pretty technical. If you're technical or if you're in sales, you run sales like a process. You can't willy-nilly sales. You got to have your CRM, you got to have your calls, you got your like, SQLs, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're coding something up, you have a process for how you build and ship code. It's the same thing in fundraising. So some tips and tricks, I would say. One is it really is about storytelling. I've raised from Rachel, the real estate local person here, all the way to Ben Horowitz. And one thing I've realized is the whole way, it's your story. So you got to tell a compelling story. Like your deck and your pitch need to be really cool and really good. um, because they're going to buy into the story. The other tips and tricks are you're going to want to tell everything, leave stuff out. Because what I've learned is, while I kind of dissed the investors a minute ago during the keynote thing, they're really smart people and they see thousands of companies. So they already know everything about you. You could go to an investor and say, I'm doing this and I have these two people on my team. That's all you need to say. And they'll know what questions to ask you. Now you need to tell a more compelling story, like why are you doing what you're doing or who you are. So that storytelling and that succinctness, that pitch really, really matters. So get your pitch down. The other tip I would say is, this is going to sound rude, apologies, is pitch the folks that don't matter first. Those are called reps. So, pitch those investors that you're like, I don't really care if they invest, or this is my buddy's sister who happens to work at a firm and I'm going to get raw feedback. Get that raw feedback in the early steps of pitching, and you'll get your rhythm. And you got to do lots of reps, 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 reps. So when you do get in the room with an NFX or a Coinbase or an Anthropics fund or whoever, you're like ready and you just, you freaking can rip it. The other thing is, and this is really, really hard to do, is you want to, everybody wants this, but you want to create that little bit of buzz if you can. It's hard to do, but if you can do that, create that FOMO, create that buzz. There's a couple ways to do that. One is you catch a wave. So with Azra, we caught a wave. We caught that end of that crypto madness funding and that craziness. And then I also had my CEO had made one of the biggest, actually, he made the biggest mobile game for EA ever. It's called Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. So I got to use that as my like, hey, Mark Otero's coming back into gaming. He made EA's highest grossing game, and he's a brilliant guy, and he's coming back, and he has a vision for the game he wants to make. So then the story just unfolded, and then what it did is it created buzz. And then what we did, the other thing you want to do, and everyone says this, but really do this, is go, hey, I'm just making friends. Like, oh, so and so at that fund? Yeah, I want to meet. Are you raising? I mean, we might raise 1 to 3 million, but right now we don't really need it. But hey, I want to tell you my story. I'd love some feedback. So you're kind of doing this dance. Like you don't want to be false. And if you're really raising, say you're raising. But if you can, try to like catch these waves and get the timing cycle right. That's the other tip I would say is Hod knows this very well. VCs have a timing, right? So it's like January is usually not great. Then you've got that end of January, into May is usually a pretty good time. And then you got back, kids are graduating, that's kind of a weird time. And then August is usually out. They're all like traveling and doing vacations in Milan or wherever. Then you've got like Labor Day to Thanksgiving, killer time. And then that holidays is rough. Now, unless you're one of the hottest deals in the world, I would stay away from those cold times and try to get them in their cycles. And then the other thing is run that process. Like when you do go to pitch, like line up lots of meetings, try and get lots, and don't be shy about doing lots of meetings. Like I know a lot of founders who are like, dude, I just took 200 meetings. It took me 200 meetings, but I got my 5 million from one founder, or sorry, from one fund. Or it took me, 160 meetings to start to get yes and get my pitch down, and then it came. They'll keep meeting. Their job is they'll meet with you all day long, all day long. But just remember their psychology, like, and remember their people, so it's like they drive their motivations are making money and getting the hot deal. And what they don't want, so you gotta kind of pray into that, like you gotta know their motivations and really pray into like what matters to them, if that makes sense. So does that answer your question, Hop? Other tips you can do too is like I learned this from Jason, like don't shy away from a rolling close. Like if you're raising money, you're like, hey, we've got a great product, but I got to get it to market and I need a couple million to get it going. Dude, if you start to get some folks that go, look, I'll do 750 and then you got to, let's go raise the rest. Like say, good, write the check. We're gonna roll this close and like get those checks in and get flowing. That's a good thing too. And then if you raise 1.6, hey, take it, lock it up, close it.
Can
Okay,
I jump in with a question?
yeah, Sam, ask you a question. And then, Sonny, I'm going to pause you before you answer, though. So,
Okay.
So just been checking out 100 Health, very cool stuff. Very education intensive, like upstream of the panic moment where people aren't having chest pains yet. Just from that go-to-market kind of perspective, they don't have any noticeable health impacts at all yet, maybe. How are you triggering that customer conversion rather than like waiting for it? How do you think about that?
Okay,
Uh-huh.
and the reason I paused you, Sonny, is that while you were answering, I am gonna just throw up this QR code here. Everybody knows me, knows I love feedback, and I share it all with Sonny afterwards. And then it also three quick questions. The NPS question: What did you love most? What could have been better? And I do want to hear who else you want us to go out and recruit for future founding memory sessions. So take out your phone, point it to the QR code, or if you don't have your phone, I did drop like the Google form link in the chat. So fill it out while Sunny answers this question.
Cool. Yeah, definitely go hard on the paint there. Yeah, Sam. So it's interesting. We're in the throes of that right now, and it's a moving target. And we started with personal invites and personal recommendations around um, testing and really just like the access to something like this. So the messaging and the positioning was really around like, hey, what concierge medicine was, you can now get access to. And what we're moving into now is a few different message tests. And the answer is we don't really know what's going to drive like mass conversion yet. We're seeing different things convert, but we're actually in the midst of releasing our growth operating system here and starting to pour fuel on the fire for us as well. So we talk a lot about preventative health. We talk a lot about what your annual physical or what your doctor will do versus what we do, which is greatly different. And then we talk a lot about guidance. So the core message that we're talking about is health data is everywhere. I mean, you can get your Oura Ring, your Apple Health. I mean, I do, we all have a ton of data, but no one's really giving you your personal guide of what to do with that data. That's what we're finding. That's what we found is like, what is the real protocol for you, for Sam personally versus Sunny versus Ha versus Danny? So not just giving you results, but giving you, and not just giving you data, but telling you what to do with it. So we're messaging around that, and then we're doing a lot of other like hook messaging. So that's where we are in our journey right now in the startup world. Cool.
We have time for one or two more questions, so go for it, Pavan.
Hi, sorry, I joined a bit late. My question was always, I'm always curious about the personal journeys and personal challenges. I love the things you're saying of fuel on fire and crush it and like that. But as I transition to entrepreneurship, there's a lot more that happens day to day. So I wonder if you could share a bit about your personal challenges and how you, I'm assuming you did because you sound like it. How came into yourself and figure out what is it that truly is that what you want to do versus what maybe an investor wants you to do. And so what is that journey? If you could give a little bit of that. And again, I mean, that this can take a whole hour, but I would love a flavor of that.
No, that's a really good question, very deep. So I'll give you a flyby, and I'll be very vulnerable here. I think in the early days of my career, I was very impulsive and not thoughtful, and I also partied a lot. So I'll say, what you saw a lot of, through the 90s and 2000s, it was a lot of hard work, hard play, and a lot of impulsivity. And that's sort of how I dealt with it. And, sometimes you can stumble across some magical things that way. But mostly what I discovered as I reflect on it is I didn't do a lot of listening and a lot of thinking. Those are the two
Mm.
things that, if you're impulsive and you're kind of, going a million miles an hour and partying, cranking all day in the office, then cranking all day at night. And it's sort of a mask for real work. And it's a mask for not listening. It's a mask for not thinking. So what shifted in me and how I deal with the day to day, because look, it's crazy. Like my challenges I deal with every day are, I think to Sam's question, like I think about messaging, I think about, and what you discover, and I look, food delivery was the best teacher of this. This baby is never full. It is always hungry. You think, oh my God, if we get 1,000 more, oh, if we get three more cities, we're going to be on the peak, and the goalpost just moves and moves and moves, and the growth never. It's like once you're out, and to Danny's question about consumer, the consumer growth will never stop. So it's stressful. The way I deal with that now is I do a lot more thinking, and I do a lot more listening, and I lead a lot more with curiosity and questions. Those are kind of my three things with both my co-founder and our people. And then when I have conviction and confidence, it's like I just lay it down. Because another thing I learned, I don't know if any of you guys have structured your companies this way, but one of the big mistakes at Requested I made was, remember I told you I kind of fucked up at Bite Club, my social network, because I was like a dictator and I was like, I already had an exit. I know exactly what to do. And I was right. I was at the right time, right product. But I really made this bad mistake of being this like dictator. And Requested, I did the full pendulum swing. I hired three technical people, and I'm not super technical. I can do a little bit, like three hardcore engineers, one, and I made it a democratic situation. So we all had to have consensus. Danny's laughing. Consensus on every decision. Stupidest thing I mean, almost more stupid than the dictator world. Because fucking nothing, there was always indecision. Because two people wanted to do this and two people wanted to do that. And then you couldn't, then you just fight on it and debate. And then you end up in this debate and this discussion, and you think you're intellectually jousting, and it's a bunch of masturbation. It's stupid. The CEO has to make the decision, the founder. And so I tell you that story not to just share the tip, like make sure you structure companies with hierarchy. Hierarchy is a good thing. It's healthy for a company, number one. But also I do this a lot with my founder now. It's like a lot of thinking, a lot of listening, and a lot of curiosity. And then it's like, okay, I know the decision. Decision made. Move on. So that's kind of how I deal with it. I hope that helps.
No, thank you. This is super helpful because you're right. I mean, I think in the early days, and which I chime in, is it's a lot about like, scavenging resources. If somebody wants to join my team, awesome, right? But also then telling them, hey, listen, yes, and there's roles and responsibilities, and this is the process of decision making. It can kind of like, be like, oh yeah, you can do whatever you want. No, you actually have to go in the same direction, otherwise that boat's not going anywhere.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah, if you run a democratic, or even I mean democratic autocratic can work, but like you're the founder, you have to drive the vision of the company, and you have to make sure people know that that is the way to go, and then you sleep a little better at night. Look, it's already going to be hard to sleep because everything's so hard, but you'll sleep better knowing, look, what it does too is it surfaces when people aren't a good fit. One thing I learned from my one of my other co-founders was he had this sort of philosophy. He's like, look, this is going to sound also kind of mean, but it's true. He's like, the bottom third of our company is going to churn out. The bottom third, he called it performance, but it's not just performance. What you discover in a startup is as you're building and growing, the call it the bottom third, or a third of the people are just in the wrong place. They're either so I hired a person who actually joined us at the wrong stage. We were the wrong stage for her. She was so used to big enterprise type of things, and she came in, I'm going to crush it for you guys. And it was like she could not handle this early stage startup thing. So stage matters. Sometimes it is performance. So you gotta have those pieces in there so you can surface that quickly, because the money's not your issue. It's time. Time is your biggest issue. It's your biggest, most valuable asset.
Thank you. How
Good.
about you're muted?
Yeah. Sonny, we're gonna let Kenlon ask the last question. I know some of you guys have to go because it's 10 o'clock. Um, Sonny, we're gonna invite you back because I know you could have gone another hour with us. But Kenlon, take the last question.
Yeah, it is quick. It is a follow on to that last question. I love your feedback on just having a hierarchy. What is the balance, would you say, about like getting ownership? Like, because then there's a certain amount of input you're taking to get ownership throughout the organization. How much input do you take?
Hmm.
Versus,
Yeah, I think you broke up, but I think I got
yeah.
your question. Your question is like, how much latitude on terms of ownership of roles and responsibilities do I give? Is that your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
and like input, because a lot of times like
Oh, and input.
people want to
Yeah.
have that sense of ownership. You want people to feel like they're part owners of what's happening.
Yeah, this is interesting. So, I'm a big believer, especially in this world that you guys are in with AI. Like what I'm finding is you can hire, I'll say like better talent and less of them and do a lot more things. So I've always been a big believer in outcomes. So I like to give a lot of ownership, but there's a caveat that actually I've had to learn about that, which is you can trust, but you do have to verify. So lots of input. Look, I want the people I hire on my team to be the experts. I want them to all be better than me. That's my goal. Like, please, like go kill it in your realm of social media or back end or front end or UI UX or any pick a role, right? Um, and so what I like to do, this is sort of how we structure things, is like we do a Monday kickoff at 8:30 a.m. It's literally like 20 minutes with leadership only. We do a Friday showcase at 1:30 p.m., all hands. And what we do is beginning of the week, we talk a little bit about here's what I'm going to accomplish. It's not here's my homework, teacher. It's like here's what I'm going to get done as a leader in the company. Maybe there's some touch-ins along the way. And then Friday is you're showing your work. It's like classic stand-up. Like, here's what I got done. Here's what I did, here's what I actually got done. If you have like and that's our mechanism. You can do whatever works for you. Some people do the 15-minute stand-up every day, whatever. But you can't just let people run too far on a leash because they'll start going all kinds of weird directions. So it's like your job is constant check-ins. So the analogy we use is like if you bring on a Steph Curry to sing threes, you don't just put him on the court and hope the season ends well. You got to go to every game. You got to watch him shoot. Like Steph, shoot threes. Like that's your job. Like sing threes. That's what I'm paying you for, right? So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks.
Okay,
Good.
this was incredible. Sonny, you had the audience the entire time. Nobody dropped off. Except for
Woo!
Garrett, who had to run to the next meeting. So we're going to have you back a couple months. Everybody's going to come with a boatload of questions next time. But thank you so much. And thanks everybody for filling out the survey feedback. We'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm bringing in another amazing serial founder to the next session. So see you in 2 weeks. Thank you,
Great to
Sonny.
meet you all.
Okay, and
Great to meet
everybody
you all.
LinkedIn connect with
Yeah,
Sonny too.
LinkedIn. Let's all LinkedIn
Yeah,
connect and best of luck.
yeah.
Talk soon. Bye,
Okay,
Ha. Bye,
bye.
Garrett.